This here is Sega's little E3 surprise. The Sega Saturn, or as some of us like to call it, the beginning of the end for Sega in the console business. But that's not why we're here. If you are a Sega fan and you love the Saturn, you're going to want to stick around because this is a Sega Saturn like you've never seen it before. It is what I would like to call the Sega Saturn Max. So let's take a couple minutes and we're going to unpack exactly what's going on the inside of this Sega Saturn and how something like this is going to keep your physical game collection in much better shape in the years to come. So buckle up, because I'm going to boot this thing up on one of my most prized pieces in my entire collection. And if you're not new to my channel, then you've probably already seen videos like the PlayStation 3 mod. If you liked that, you're definitely gonna like this. This here is what I would consider to be the perfect marriage between like retro technology and modern technology. Now, I do want to start this video off by saying, if it's not obvious, I collect video games. And while I don't collect them for their value, I do collect them because I absolutely love and am fascinated with video game history. With that said, I am a big advocate of keeping a lot of your retro consoles original. But if you were like me and you've picked up multiple consoles over the years, then this is most certainly something that you're going to want to check out, especially if you have a very large collection of physical games that you want to keep in good shape. This here is actually the Mode mod by Tofer.A, and Mode stands for Multi-Optical Disc Emulator, which is exactly like it sounds. It takes the optical drive out of your console, and in this case, Dr. Mod used a hard drive. You could also use a USB drive, or you can use an SD card. And I actually have a very similar mod in one of my Dreamcasts with an SD card. I also have a very similar mod for the PS1, which also uses an SD card. We'll make videos on those a little bit later. This one, Dr. Mod chose to use a hard drive, and I aesthetically really like how it looks. When you open the disc tray up, it displays the hard drive with the Sega Saturn logo on it. Thought that was a really nice touch. If you've seen stuff like my Wii mod video, I always sort of tell you the level of difficulty of these mods. And the Wii mod is what I would call a beginner's mod. Very easy to do. This mod is what I would call a level 10 expert mod for multiple reasons. The Mode mod by Tofer.A for the Sega Saturn in specific is actually in very high demand right now. So not only are they hard to find, but when you can find them, they are kind of expensive. You're looking at about $200 just for this kit. And for some people, that's probably a bust. And while the mod doesn't require any soldering or cutting, it does require a complete teardown of the entire console. And by teardown, I mean literally everything comes apart to put this thing together. But I will say, the entire thing can be done with a Phillips screwdriver if you have the patience. I personally don't have the patience, and so Dr. Mod did this one for me. As always, if you want Dr. Mod's info, his email is in the description below. Even though this doesn't pertain necessarily to the Mode mod itself, one of my favorite things about this Saturn, which is the one that sits in my personal collection, is the fact that it is an entirely complete Sega Saturn library. So not only every single North American release, but also every Japanese release, including a bunch of demos and some prototypes that never made it to market. There's a lot of really cool stuff on this particular mod. And much like all the other mods, this also does play emulator. In fact, I would say that the Saturn runs some of the emulators better than the PlayStation 1 does. And I know this comment always splits people down the middle, but Sega was always just a little bit ahead of the curve. And some of you may remember when the Saturn launched, you could actually save your games to the console, but you could also buy a memory card that went in this cartridge slot. A lot of folks thought that maybe this was a cartridge slot for a game, but actually had two functionalities. You could put a memory cartridge in here to save your games, and you can also put expanded RAM in there that would give you 4 megabytes of extra RAM for the console to run on. The Saturn was sort of ahead of its time. Unfortunately, that surprise E3 launch did not help it at all. But this mod allows you to save games to the console memory itself and manage the game saves from the menu. And don't worry, we're going to talk about Sega's true masterpiece in a future video. Another really cool thing that I loved about the Saturn was the release of the Sega Saturn 3D pad. I don't know if you guys remember this, but this came with Nights into Dreams, and it was among one of the first controllers to actually use an analog stick. Now, okay, before you go jumping into the comments, I said it was among one of the first. And if you really take a close look at the 3D pad, this was just like one step away from the Dreamcast controller. I really liked it. And now, one of the moments you've all been waiting for, let's get down to the nitty-gritty and take a look at the UI on this bad boy. And as I promised, we're going to play it in its natural habitat, as you would have found it in the wild back in the mid-90s. Check this out. This is my Sega Saturn store kiosk. It's an original store kiosk that sat inside of a Toys R Us. This is where my modded Saturn lives, and this is where we're going to take a look at this thing. Of course, we're going to do it with a 3D pad. So the main menu of mode is broken up into a handful of different folders. The first folder is all of the US releases. The second folder is all of the Japanese releases. The third folder is all of the European releases, which is mostly all of the same stuff we got here in North America. This fourth folder is a world folder. It's a handful of games that were released in other territories like Brazil, France, Germany, Italy, Korea, Spain, and Taiwan. I said it was a very complete collection. Now, this fifth folder is a really special folder. This is betas, prototypes, and demos. And this is where all of the betas of prototypes would live. So if we go all the way over, this is a folder of prototype games from either Japan. This folder contains the prototype to Heart of Darkness, which was a Japanese game that never got released. If we go back to the USA folder, we got the Bedlam prototype, we got Jewels of the Oracle prototype, and Return Fire prototype. It's really neat to have some of these prototypes at your fingertips of games that, never saw the light of day. Now we can go into the demos folder. There was lots of Japanese demos, and they're all playable here. Now let's take a look at some of my favorite US released Sega Saturn games. The thing I love about the menus in this mode mod is that it gives you full box art of every game on the system. Not only that, but it gives you all of the details at the bottom. So let's check out one of my favorite games, Brain Dead 13. You ever play Brain Dead 13? Great game. When you select it, it tells you Brain Dead 13, it tells you what territories it came out in, tells you what year, 1996, and it tells you what languages this version of the game plays in. In this case, it's just English. And when you select the game you want to play, it gives you a full description of the game, which I think is super cool. It even tells you the development team and gives you some screenshots. That thing is definitely one of the coolest pieces in my collection. And quick little story, it was actually given to me about 25 years ago by a friend of mine who owned a video game store, and it's been in my collection ever since. I cherish that. The purpose of these videos isn't to give you step-by-step directions on how to install mods like this. I only make these videos to share in some of the awesome things that some of these vintage and newer consoles are capable of. If you haven't gathered this by now, or you haven't watched some of my other videos, I actually own full collections of a lot of this stuff. I've been collecting since I was my son's age, which is 10. And I would like to point out, the reason I do love a lot of these console mods and have them in my collections is because my collections are very large, and in some cases, though I'm not concerned about having sealed copies of games, some of the rarer games, I would prefer to not take off the shelf and keep them in as good of condition as I possibly can. And a console mod like this does just that. As I always say, the games are always best run on their native hardware. And believe it or not, this is Sega Saturn games running on a Sega Saturn. You're just not spinning the disc up. This is an optical disc emulator, and it's still running that game on the Sega Saturn hardware. If you don't want to do it yourself, like I don't, you could always hit up Dr. Mod. That's who did this beautiful mod and most of my other mods, and put it in this beautiful blue shell to match that store kiosk. If you haven't caught the gist by now, I genuinely love this stuff. I love being around it. I love the nostalgia that it gives me, and I love raising my children around this stuff. Whether or not they take interest in it is totally up to them, but it's here for them if they do want to experience the stuff that I experienced growing up. And at some point when I am gone, they can then do whatever they would like with my collection. So, that means if they want to sell it, more power to them. But I don't collect for the monetary value. I have actually never sold any of my stuff, if you don't already get that. The consoles we have played over the years are capable of some really, really awesome stuff. One of my new personal favorites is the PlayStation 3 mod. You really should check that one out if you haven't yet. The video is right here. And if you want to see stuff like the Dreamcast or the PlayStation 1 done just like this, don't forget to subscribe to my channel right here so you don't miss the videos when they do launch in the very near future. And until then, enjoy the journey.